Hi, everybody. I just wanted to do a little update on a recent sermon post that we put up for you on the fire of God. I mentioned in that message 4 things that would quench or dampen or prevent us from having that passionate fire of God burning in us, that love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, mind, and strength, that the Holy Spirit deposits in us. And I mentioned 3, and because of time and different things that were happening, left out number 4. So here's number 4. And it's one that maybe many of you can guess, but number 4 is offense. Offense is a huge fire quencher. It's like a bucket of ice water that comes in and just cuts out everything else, because offense will shut down love. It will actually cut you off from being able to love your neighbor, and some people from really even expressing love to God, even though they still love God. But if they're offended with Him or with others, it just kind of cuts them off. You know, you've all been, or at least maybe many of you have been in that place where you've had that heated discussion or argument, or something's happened, disagreement at home. And what does it feel like if you've still been angry when you left? You said things you shouldn't have said and brought up things you shouldn't have brought up, and things got really out of hand, and then you're driving home after a time period has passed. And how do you feel when you're coming to that front door? You have that awkward feeling. It's hard to get the conversation going. Nobody wants to say anything. And you can feel that even though there may be just a very short physical distance, but you're a million miles apart in your thoughts. And offense has begun to come. And imagine that building over long periods of time, becoming stronger and stronger and stronger, and how awkward that is to begin to try and break that down. And so that's why Jesus warns us against offense. And in the book of Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32, it says, "Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you." Ephesians 4:32. That was a song in Sunday school, and it's so important. Let's repeat it one more time. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, has forgiven you. And how has God forgiven us? He's forgiven us completely, absolutely, and totally. He holds no offense. God is not offended because He will not be in bondage. Offense brings bondage. It brings limitations. It boxes you in. I mean, think about the word, offense. It puts up a fence. It limits you. It keeps you away from something. It keeps you out of something, and it keeps you in something else. And so in order to take away those limitations and those barriers and those boundaries, then offense needs to be gotten rid of. And that's done through forgiveness, making a choice, not a feeling, because you will never feel like forgiving anyone. It will never happen. You might know that you need to do it, and you may feel that you need to do it, but you won't feel like actually doing it. It's a decision that you make. And then even in that decision, you need to trust that God will supply the feeling, that God will supply the ability to actually complete the action. Because, let's face it, some people have been through some pretty horrific things. And unless somebody would say, "Oh my goodness, I could never do it, I could never forgive." I think of the story of Corrie ten Boom, who some of you may know or may not know, but during World War II, the ten Boom family, they were a family in Holland that hid Jews from the Nazis when they invaded, and they were eventually caught and shipped off to the concentration camps. And Corrie's sister was killed by one of the guards. She was beaten and she died as a result of that beating in the concentration camps. Her father died en route to one of the camps. He became sick. He was an old man and died. And she experienced the brutality of Ravensbrück concentration camp. And then when she was miraculously released and began to tour the world, telling her story about how God had rescued her. And after speaking on forgiveness on this very thing, one night at one of her meetings, she met one of her former Nazi prison guards who came to her and asked for forgiveness. Now, did she feel like forgiving? Absolutely not. She says she didn't. But she said she made a choice. And she said to God, "I will perform the action, you have to supply the feeling." And God did a miraculous work in her heart to be able to forgive that man and to be able to be free. And who found the freedom? Well, yes, the guard found freedom, but Corrie found freedom. And when you forgive someone, you're actually freeing yourself. You are no longer controlled, attached to that person or what they have done. You've opened the door for healing. You've opened the door for release. And you've opened the door for God to begin to fill your heart with something, not with anger or bitterness or resentment or hurt, but to flood your heart with the love of God and to be able to receive healing and express that to the world around you, be able to receive and to give to God and to others. And so offense is something we need to deal with, we need to get rid of. If we know that we need to forgive someone, if we know we've taken offense, we need to deal with it, because it will absolutely quench, eventually, if it's left untended, the fire of God, because it's something that takes over. It will not just occupy one part of us. It will take over, because once there's one offense, there can be two. Once there's two, there can be three, and so on, until our whole life can be governed by offense. And we certainly don't want that. We want to be free. We don't want to allow the enemy of our soul to control us through offense, through resentment, through bitterness, through unforgiveness, and all those associated things. So I wanted to just come to you and really put out an appeal to you today to really consider, if there's any offense, to ask, first of all, for the Holy Spirit's help, to ask God to help you to deal with that, and then to take action and to make a choice and say, I choose to forgive that person. I choose to let that go. I put it in God's hands. And if you can speak directly to the individual, then I encourage you to do that. If that's not possible because they're no longer living or because of circumstances, then maybe write it down or talk to God about it. But speak it out loud. Let your ears hear. Look in the mirror. Let your eyes see yourself. And just before we close off today, many people that we have met, as much as they've had some very horrific things done to them, the person that they find most difficult to forgive is themselves. And that's so important, because if God has forgiven you, if God is not holding anything against you, then you need to forgive yourself. Because maybe if you're not experiencing a closeness with God, if you're not able to receive that real experience of the love of God in your life, that could be what's holding you back. Because if you are ashamed, or if you are holding a grudge against yourself, then you're still in that place. Remember, we talked about the drive home and coming in, and how that conversation is so strained, and that's what you're holding on to in your heart. You're holding on to that strain between you and God. And even though He would love to talk to you and He would love to be near you, you're in that place of just, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it. I feel so awkward every time I start getting around the presence of God. I just feel like, oh, what am I going to do? And if you're holding offense against yourself, that could be not God closing you out, because He certainly isn't doing that, but it could be us closing ourselves off from God. So if you have a chance today, take a minute, go in the bathroom or wherever you have a mirror, look in the mirror, look yourself in the eye and say, I choose to forgive you. Put your name in there and be free. Be free, and let the passion for Jesus Christ, the love of God that is shed abroad in your heart by the Holy Spirit, just well up in you and overwhelm you towards God and towards other people, because this is a work that the Holy Spirit is doing and has done in the new creation. It's for you, and I invite you to receive it.